Howdy, y'all. Welcome back. Thank you for being here. I recently found myself deep in the rabbit hole of researching the largest wooden ships to have ever existed in history. And prepare yourselves because the findings are absolutely fascinating. When discussing these massive achievements in shipbuilding, I was almost shocked to see that a lot of them are arks, or at least resemble what we might consider to be an ark, as in a simple vessel without sails or an engine of any kind. Moreover, the arks in question, which we will look at thoroughly today, were the main transportation that was used across Russia and America from the 16th century through the advent of steam power. These simply floated along the rivers, but what makes this far more fascinating than initially conceived is that these arks, nearly every single ark that we'll look at today, was considered to be a disposable ship, as the ships had no engine and no motor, and most did not even have sails. These vessels could not return from where they came. They were meant for a one-way journey. They could not sail back upstream. And thus, the disposable ships were made to be fully deconstructed upon their arrival to the destination, with the wood that was used to build the ship, the wood in the ship's actual construction, being part of the lumber haul that would then be dropped off and sold upon the ship arriving at the destination. Essentially, these ships were disposable, they were deconstructed, and they were sold for parts upon arrival. This also avoided mostly all of the pesky old world taxes that could be incurred from their journey. In America, disposable arks could be built using relatively crude hand tools and were usually smaller than their Russian counterparts. Arks were built in America in colonial and early republic times, primarily, we're told, to carry cargo downriver. As the canals of America began functioning in the early 1800s, some of these arks became absolutely massive and would travel over 100 miles in one journey. On the Susquehanna River, the 18th century arks reached over 75 feet long. When we're focusing on wooden vessels, the largest confirmed wooden ship in all of history is the Wyoming, a 450-foot long, six-mast schooner built in Maine in the year 1909. In 1924, the Wyoming sank with all crew members in heavy waters. The second largest wooden ship in history, I believe, is far more interesting, and this was known as the Solano. The Solano was an absolutely massive railroad ferry, essentially a ship that would transport entire trains across California's Carquinez Strait. The Solano was a wooden paddle steamer, and when completed, was the largest ferry in the world. However, with steam power, this was also not a traditional ark, yet the fact that it was made out of wood is completely fascinating. It's such a dichotomy when we see the old world style wooden vessels carrying industrial age trains across California wilderness. The Solano was built in 1879, was scuttled to create breakwater in 1931, and the Solano measured 425 feet long. The Solano was equipped with two 2,000 horsepower steam engines, and the Solano was ordered and owned by the Central Pacific Railroad. If we consider the possibility of ships from around this time period being inherited from another source, then the third ship on our list is rather fascinating. The Dunderberg is a wooden ship that was covered in iron armor, also known as a casemate ironclad, which was founded in 1865. Initially, this was considered to be an enlarged copy of the Confederacy's similar ship, the CSS Virginia. However, the Dunderberg was actually not accepted by the Union Army in 1865, as the war had already neared an end. Remarkably, we're told the massive ship, the Dunderberg, at 352 feet long, was then showcased around Europe, searching for a new buyer. When Prussia attempted to make an offer on the ship in 1867, France swooped in and made an even larger offer as to not allow the Prussians to gain access to such a vessel. France bought the Dunderberg, the third largest wooden ship in history, and then put it into storage, not planning to ever use the ship. However, in 1870, the Franco-Prussian War broke out. The Dunderberg remained in lockup and was never used in any battle before being scrapped for parts in 1874. Something about that narrative simply does not add up. Which leads me into the fourth largest wooden ship of all time, a disposable ship known as the Columbus. The Columbus was intended to be a temporary or disposable rudimentary sailing vessel, yet it was also the fourth largest wooden ship of all time, measuring over 300 feet long. Furthermore, the Columbus was not just intended to float downriver, although it was built in British North America in 1824. But the Columbus, a disposable ship, was actually tasked with sailing from Quebec to London across the Atlantic Ocean. This sounds absolutely obtuse. A disposable ship sailing across the ocean. And yet, in the current narrative, we're told this is exactly what the Columbus did. The vessel, designed by Charles Wood, was intended to be dismantled upon arrival and her considerable structure of wood then sold, thus avoiding an import duty on timber cargo. That's where we hit one of the most important aspects of the narrative regarding disposable ships, Arks of before the year 1900. These vessels were made to be disposable, in larger instances to avoid taxation. Columbus, the ship, was 10 times the size of traditional timber-carrying cargo vessels, and was built for economy, not speed. She carried a load of over 8,000 tons of lumber, successfully arriving in London to massive fanfare in November of 1824. Remarkably, the Columbus survived this initial journey and was sent back to America. However, on this return voyage, we're told the Columbus hit inclement weather, began to take on water, and then was luckily rescued by the vessel known as the Dolphin. In Russia, the disposable Arks had their own unique name in history, and it appears the Arks, or disposable ships of Russia, may actually predate the Arks of America and other countries by numerous decades. The Russian Belyana is a large disposable type of ship used for timber rafting, primarily utilized on the Volga River from the 16th century onward. We're told the largest Russian Belyanas reached well over 390 feet long. However, due to their remote location and the ships being deconstructed upon arrival to their destination, the Russian Belyanas are not well documented. We're told the same Russian Belyanas that we're looking at today have been recorded as carrying upwards of 12,800 tons in one single wooden ship. Now, if you're familiar with the concept of Grand Tartary or Tartaria, and even if you are not, you may be familiar with the importance of the city of Astrakhan to the former Golden Horde and to the other elites who previously controlled the lands of Russia. Astrakhan was once one of the most lavishly built cities in Russia, which also happened to control much of the trade around this time. We're told the original Belyanas floated from the upper Volga to Astrakhan, with hundreds arriving every year. The main cargo was timber, bark fiber, mats, other similar goods, and in some instances, more important or valuable materials. The name Belyana related to the Russian word for the color white, differentiating the Belyanas from the more complex tarred ships, which usually appeared darker in color due to the tar. Dense stacking of the loaded timber was used to achieve an acceptable structural strength of the ship. Essentially, Belyanas are simply thousands of logs cut to the exact length needed, tied together by rope to form the shape of a ship, and then sent downstream. It's honestly so simple, yet ingenious, and somewhat hard to believe that small groups of workers, between 10 to 20 men, could construct these disposable Belyana arks in a matter of days. We're told Russian Belyanas could travel upwards of 1,000 miles or more in their journeys. For example, looking into the numbers further, in 1884, there were 120 Belyanas on the Volga River alone, and in 1885, another 152 were built. These vessels were originally built without a single nail. Another interesting fact here is that Belyanas served as marketing for the merchants who controlled them. As we're told, nearly every Belyana had at least two flags, one representing Russia and one representing the merchant. However, many had numerous more flags, also representing the state, as well as blessings from saints and other sayings deemed to be appropriate for the occasion. We're also told that the Soviet Union incorporated Belyanas decades after they had fallen into disuse, and Belyanas were used to rebuild Russia after the Second World War. Which brings me very nicely into the last wooden vessel I'd like to discuss with you today. What some historians claim is easily the largest wooden ship to have ever graced the face of our earth. Yet, according to others, this ship simply cannot be confirmed to have ever existed. While the Ark of Noah was considered to be roughly 500 feet long by modern scientific estimates of the text, we have another historic ark that was estimated to be twice that size. We're discussing Wang Jun's tower ship of the 3rd century AD, estimated to have measured over 1,000 feet long and constructed during the Jin's conquering of the Wu. The tower ship was a floating fortress, meant to be the central vessel in the fleet, equipped for boarding and attacking enemy vessels, as well as with siege weapons, including trebuchets. What's even more remarkable is this was a river ship, meant to conduct battle and patrol the rivers of China. At 1,000 feet long, containing a massive pagoda on top, we can only begin to imagine what this ancient Chinese war ark could have truly looked like. I believe I'm going to wrap up my narrative for the day there. These arks of the old world are absolutely fascinating to me, and I truly was so taken aback when I first came across the photographs of the Russian Belyanas. This technology appears to be as old as recorded history itself, and yet we really don't have any part of our narrative focusing on this aspect of water travel, which quite literally shaped both America and Russia. the disposable Arks, these massive feats of engineering, these vessels that appear to me to be so advanced they could take a meticulously well-crafted ship without any nails, without any tar, and they could float it over 1,000 miles. Could we achieve something like that today? Most likely no, simply due to the infrastructure that has been placed in our rivers, but I'd love to hear your opinion about this type of watercraft down below. If you want to support me directly, there's a link in my YouTube profile, and you can also reach out to me there with any of your ideas and suggestions. I appreciate all of you being here so much. If you enjoy these type of videos, then you're in luck, as I have hundreds of other videos with tens of thousands of old world images for you to check out. I can't wait to hear your theories in the comment section down below, and we will talk more on the next video. I can't wait to see you there.